Not a lot is known about how the transportation of goods by water first began. Large cargo boats were being used in some parts of the world up to 5,000 years ago. However, sea trade became more widespread when large sailing boats traveled between ports, carrying spices, perfumes and objects made by hand. Grid resources are not very easy to use for the end users, who have to learn how to generate security credentials. There is an imminent need to provide transparent access to these resources so that the end users are shielded from the complicated details. The Founding Fathers established constitutional protections for the press because they understood that leaving the watchdog function to partisan politicians wouldn't necessarily serve the public interest. Both sides have too many incentives to preserve the status quo and ignore problems that elude quick fixes. Some people object that in order for the AI to modify and still remain a useful instrument to its owner, many changes would have had to take place simultaneously. However, it is not necessary to suppose this if the modifications were extremely slight and gradual. Opponents say that they are nothing more than symbols of decline, since Australians Jennifer Hawkins and Lauren Eagle were crowned Miss Universe and Miss Teen International respectively. There has been a dramatic increase in interest in beauty pageants in this country. Researchers have found that divorce has different kinds of negative impacts on the planet, including higher demand for resources and a lower rate of efficiency in the use of household resources. People have been talking about how to protect the environment and combat climate change, but divorce is an overlooked factor that needs to be considered. A recent trend in the entertainment world is to adapt classic works of literature for either TV or movies. One argument is that this is to everyone's benefit, as it introduces people to works they might otherwise never have, but is rarely done successfully. Where there are effects, there are often side effects. The car is a boon to mobility, but can lead to obesity, deaths, and pollution. Burning fossil fuel may keep economies going, but wrecks the climate in the long run. In a similar way, there are side effects to information technology in education settings, from childcare to the classroom to the lecture hall and beyond. By beginning so early, he knows that he has plenty of time to do thoroughly all the work he can be expected to do. All his work having been finished in good time, he has a long interval of rest in the evening before the timely hour when he goes to bed. There will always be the exception, such as the murderous regime in Iraq, where the only safe strategy is to keep it in the isolation ward until it accepts the norms of international behavior. Housing fulfills the basic needs that people have for security, privacy, and shelter. While the adequacy of housing is an important component of individual well-being, housing also has great impact on the nation's economy, with its influence on investment levels, interest rates, building activity, and employment. While far fewer people these days write letters, and therefore have less use for stamps, there are still a few categories of stamp which attract collectors. Stamps in common use for an indefinite period, until the price goes up, are called definitive issues. Generally, in the past, even in Europe until the 18th century, it was assumed that it could tell how any society should work. The past was the model for the present and the future. It represented the key to the genetic code, by which each generation produced its successors and ordered their relationships. In recent years there have been one or two significant happenings that have kept alive the hope that the deep sea may conceal strange links with the past. In December 1938, off the southeast tip of Africa, an amazing fish was caught alive, a fish that was supposed to have been dead for at least 60 million years. They did find something that had a much bigger impact on wildlife: habitat quality. The best predictor of wildlife abundance was not human activity, but factors like forest connectivity, nearby housing density, and the amount of adjacent agriculture. The results were published in the Journal of Applied Ecology. A study found that the research funded by the soft drinks industry have different results from research funded by other sources, and went on to suggest that there may have been biased by the research itself. The whole point of the scientific methods is to ensure the research results are not influenced by the source of funding. As introverts are thinking, they reach back into long-term memory to locate information. An introvert will often compare old and new experiences when making a decision, which slows the processing down but leads to carefully thought-out decisions. This means that introverts have an active dialogue with themselves and usually walk around with many thoughts in their minds. Elephants recognize and stroke the bones of a lost family member. As biologists delve into these subjects, they're demonstrating that we're not nearly as unique as we once thought. It's the perfect time, scientifically speaking, to reassess our place in the animal kingdom. Honey has traditionally been credited with significant medical powers, and it has played a major part in many folk remedies, but it seems now its efficacy is not just an old wives' tale. Recent research has shown there is scientific evidence to prove that honey contains elements that prevent bacteria from growing. Taking soundings in the deep ocean was, and long remained a laborious and time-consuming task, and knowledge of the undersea topography lagged considerably behind our acquaintance with the landscape of the near side of the moon. Over the years, methods were improved,